it again.
Great. Good. So this is what Lilith does, and therefore the men have an emission. And when men sleep alone in their house, she manages to infiltrate her way into being close contact with them, but Natli Minayu to overta, and she arouses them to a passion, Va'olidan Minayu, and therefore she is able to give birth. The two Pagin Be Bamarin Velo Yada. Now, she created these demons from the semen of a particular man, and these demons which are created feel an affiliation with their father, and therefore they are likely to damage him because he should have made them into angels, or at least people. Instead, they are demons because the semen didn't go into a human female. So they are, as it were, very troubled demons, and they may take their revenge on him, which we'll get to later. And all this happens when the moon is on the wane. So beware, when the moon is on the wane, then demons are much more easily created from the semen that is emitted vainly. It doesn't go into the human female as it ought to. So the Gemara in Shabbat 151 and Eruvin 18b, Shmuley, please.
Refers tangentially to the idea that vain seed emission creates demons, but it is the Kabbalah which makes it into a sin of cardinal proportions.
Cardinal means great, immense sin, possibly the very worst sin. Indeed.
Is to be a cardinal.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to say that. Unless, of course, you're a Jewish cardinal, and there've been those two. The Bishop of Paris, not a cardinal, was a Jew, correct? Jean-Marie Lustiger.
Lustiger, yeah.
The Bishop of Paris, he converted during the Shoah, and they say that when he had a yahrzeit for his mother or his father, he would put on a hat, put a scarf around his neck and coat, and go to say Kaddish at the back of the shul, and there you are. Okay, anyhow, so there are two Gemarot at least which refer tangentially to the idea that vain seed creates emission, creates demons. Kabbalah makes it into a major sin. Indeed.
In the following passage from the Zohar, it is described as a sin for which there is no possibility of repentance.
Now, this is very serious. Not to be able to do tshuva has to be a very serious sin. The Zohar decided this was the case. Dahat Taninan, Kol man da'afik zarei berei kanaya ikre ra. Now, whoever spills his seed on the ground is called Ra, evil. And will never see the face of the Shekhinah. Dichtiv. Ki lo el chafetz resha'ata. You are not a God who desires evil. Lo yigurucha Ra. Ra will not live in the same place as you. Now, of course, how do we connect the word Ra with vain emission of seed, with hashchatat zera? Clearly, it is Vaya Vayhi Er Bechor Yehuda Ra Beinei Hashem. So we are assuming that Er's sin was that he was mashchit zaro. Does it say so? No, it doesn't. It says that Er died because he did evil, but it is Onan, his brother, about whom the Torah says shichet arza. Okay? He definitely spilt his seed on the ground, but not Er. But because the Zohar wants to get to a point where it says that Ra is hashkatat zera, is vain spilling of seed, therefore the same sin that Onan did, Er did. And remember, if you turn around the letters of Er, what you get? Ra. So from his very name, his inception, he's evil, thoroughly evil. Tachazeh, come and see. Bishar chayve alma lakti vayera b'nei Hashem. In no other sin does it say, and he was evil in the face of the Lord, on the eyes of the Lord. V'chan ktiv vayera b'nei Hashem asher asa. But that, of course, is Onan. So the Zohar conflates Er and Onan, makes them into the same sinner and the same personality almost. My Tama, Mishum Dichtiv, Veshichet Arza, Tanan, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Letlan Chova Be'alma, De La Itle Tshuva. No sin does not bear the possibility of doing tshuva, bar mihai, except for this one. The Letlach Chivaya, the Lachamaan Apeshinta, bar mihai. And if you commit this sin, you will never see the face of the Shekhinah. This is the only one. Dichtiv lo yugurcha ra. All of this is Zohar. Now, Rabbi Jacob Emden takes serious issue with this statement in his critique of the Zohar. Remember mitpachat svarim, and he says, Harei elu dvarim kashim umarim. These are evil and hard words. Hatshuva lachet shelo nizkar b'Torah beferush rak beremez. There's nothing mentioned in the Torah in its legal part about hashchatat zera, and certainly in terms of the one who is Ra, there's no mention even of hashchatat zera in the story part of the Torah. So what's going on here, says Rav Emden. V'chlal gadol b'dinenu ein davar ha'omed bifnei hatshuva. And we know that tshuva conquers all. V'tameh al atzmacha al shlosha rashei averot she'en beyehareg ve'al yavor. Think about the three cardinal sins, the really cardinal ones. Avodah zarah, gilui arayot, and Shvichus domim. There we had it in the real McCoy, all the way from Manchester, okay? Shvichus domim. Yesh len tshuva, but you can do tshuva. Ulezeh achet shelo ba bo afilu lo taseh greda. And this sin, which doesn't even have an official halachic lo taseh, muvuar legamri ela michlal anishma, but you can derive it from lo tashchit, or peru or revu, which halachis do. En lekabel guzma zo. What does that mean? We do not accept such an exaggeration. This is out of all proportion, completely out of all proportion. Now, and the Rambam, of course, paskins la halacha motzi shipazer lavatara asur, forbidden to have to vainly emit seed. There's no malkot. It's not an official law, not a good thing to do. But the Zohar makes this into the most serious possible sin. And now we're going to read a section from the Zohar, and let's see how this goes. Rabbi Yitzchak Havashachia Kamed Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yitzchak was one of the members of Rabbi
Sinclair, can you move the text a little bit to the left, because we don't see the beginning of the lane.
Oh, I see.
Move it.
It's fine for most people. It must be something at your end.
Okay.
We can all
it's
see
very
it.
clear.
So I'm afraid if I start to play with this, I'll probably mess this up for.
All good.
But if Yael, if you have a printer, you could print off the sources.
Of course.
Okay. All right. Amar le haikra dichtiv atishachet aretz lifnei ha'elohim. Now we're going back to the Mabul. So as I was looking for the word hashchata, all right, we found it with Onan, but not with Er, but that didn't bother the Zohar. Now we find it in the Mabul. Now, it says Vatishachet haaretz, and therefore God said, the earth is full of corruption, I'm going to destroy all life. Why should the earth suffer? Because of people. Kill the people, but don't destroy the earth. Zohar is very anthropocentric. People, they're the center and zenith of the universe, and therefore the earth has to suffer because of human beings' sins. And anybody who's into climate change knows the earth suffers when human beings sin. It actually does. The inon mechablin ara, we destroy the earth. The hi itchabalit, and it becomes destroyed. That's why it says vatishachet haaretz, even though it was people and not the earth. Ukra uchach dichtiv, vayar Elohim et haaretz kivine nishchata, ki shchit kol basar darko al haaretz. Why is the earth mushchetet? Because kol basar, people, they were corrupt, and the corruption of people goes into the earth. There is this idea, v'lo takanifu et haaretz, through bloodshed, but that is killing people. The Zohar, of course, says that lo tachanifu et haaretz because of retzach or shvichut damim, change shvichut damim to shvichat zera, and we can get there again according to that route. The two, kol chata'ui debarnash kulu chabaluta delay talyan bitshuva. Any sin normally can have tshuva. The chata do oshid zara al ara umachabla archei, but the sin of throwing oshid shada, throwing seed onto the earth, umachabla archei, and destroying the natural course of things. Okay, uva'afik zara al ara, and he says it again, machabel lei umachabel ara. It destroys the person who does it and destroys the entire earth. Ba'alei ketiv nichtam avonech lefanai. Your sin is so deeply inhered, the stain is so deep we cannot get rid of it. Uchtiv bei ki lo el chafetz resha ata lo yugurcha ra uchtiv ahier b'chol yuda ra b'nei Hashem v'yimter Hashem v'haitmar amar le'amai da'in kuchav richu alma b'maya. Now we get into the question of why God destroyed all of life because of hashkatat zera, okay, with water. Why didn't he asha, send fire, v'la b'mila achra, or something else? Amale razahu. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says this is a secret. The ha'inun chabili archaihu begin damayan ilain or mayan tatain. Lo itchabru. The problem is that we're dealing with fluids, bodily fluids, the upper world and the lower world. The seed that goes from the man to the woman in this world has an effect on the divine flow upwards. Talking about flows and nozlim, the nozle guf, bodily fluids, and we have a problem here, according to the Zohar, because lo itchabru kidekayot, they don't get together like they should. The bodily fluids don't go where they should go, and that is going to cause a rupture and a disharmony. Ma inun chabili orchayu, gavna damayan duchurin v'nukvin light chabru, because the male and the female fluids do not join. Valda it danu b'mayan. Therefore, it's fitting that they are all destroyed with a fluid, namely the waters of the flood. Oman alan mayan ilain bina, oman tatain malchut. And of course, if you do not have the male sperm going into the female receptacle, then this affects the union between Malchut, which is our world, okay, the world of Asiyah, and Bina, one of the, that's the female Sphira. So we got a big problem here. Dina lekaval dina, therefore you get Midah keneged Midah, and it says Nivku kol mainot tohom rabah. That's also a mystical phrase, by the way. What does it mean that all of the springs of the deep, of the great deep, were split open? Bikiya, beka, not a hernia, but a beka, there's a split. There's a dysfunction here. It's not going where it ought to go. Damayan tatan varubot hashamayim niftachu, damayan alain, the upper waters and the lower waters. Man ilain Rabbi Chiyav Rabbi Yehuda va'azri ba'archa. Umatu legabi turin ravravan. Now, Rabbi Chiyav and Rabbi Yehuda were walking, and they came to some high mountains. Vashkuchu b'nei Turaya, garmi b'nei Nasha, davu mi'anun b'nei Tufna. and they found that there were huge holes in the earth, okay? And there were 300 pisian bigrama chada. And in one of these holes, you could walk 300 steps. Perhaps it was where a meteorite landed, I'm not sure. If you want to find some basis in this. Tavaheu amru hainu da amru, charbana d'inun lahavu mistafun, midina dekut shabarichu. Why was the generation of flood not scared of the threat of a flood? Why? Because they were very big. And they said to God, nothing you can do to us is going to destroy us. Ma avdu havusitimin baraglayu mabui tahoma. Why? Because they could stick their huge feet that had made this crater in the ground into these springs underneath, and they were able to stop them up. Umaya nafkin retichan v'lo yachilu lemekan buhu. But God put up the temperature of the water until it was scalding hot. So the huge feet of these giants couldn't stop up the Mainot Tahom, and therefore they eventually all died. So, very serious. The Mabul was caused by Hashkatat Zera, by vain emission of seed. The punishment was with Mayim Rotchim, boiling water, which is a very close, I guess, symbol for the male seed. But if we go beyond the Zohar to Lurianic Kabbalah, David, would you like to do a little reading in English, please? Line 22, the link between.
The link between seed spilling and the creation of demons at the hands of Lilith is emphasized in detail in the Lurianic Kabbalah.
Okay, it is emphasized in detail. I just need to say that the story is repeated all the time but I guess I should translate it. נמצא שהמוציא שכבת זרע לבטלה, גורם שאותם טיפות של הנשמות שעתידות לצאת ממנו בנים שיתעברו בסטרא אחרא, ושם יתלבשו בגופות הנעשות מסטרא תנחש אשת זנונים, נמצא שהפך והחזיר הקדושה לתרומה והטוב אל הרע. Human semen has the potential to create people. When it doesn't go into the female where it should, then you are spilling the seed, and then it is taken by Lilith, joined up with the forces of evil, Sitra Akra, the other side. So if we continue the course, we can talk about all the demons and the angels, and then they get these, as it were, ring wraiths. Anybody read Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, the ring wraiths? Okay, they are, as it were, bodiless or soulless, but have bodies anyhow. This idea that you create these demons, and according to the Zohar, the Kabbalah, demons are all around us, just like microbes, germs, bacteria, okay? We carry them, they are, and Zohar says if you could see them, you would die on the spot. How many demons are there around you? Michael, don't smile, it's not funny. Far too many, okay? You would die if you realized how many there were in every drop of air.
I don't realize.
Exactly. צריך אתה לדעת שבשעת הזיווג, להיות שהוא מעשה בהימות ונתעורר תאוות הזימה, then Lilith comes around, takes a drop or two from the holy organ, and then which stays in the sheet. עושה מהן שדים. Was active intercourse, there's a sheet, semen has been spilt, and what does that do? It gives Lilith the material she needs to make demons. David, would you like to read the next bit? The Ari HaKadosh.
The Ari composed a special prophylactic to be uttered before intercourse in order to prevent Lilith carrying out her nefarious designs.
In other words, we can say something before intercourse. Well, okay, whatever. And that will prevent this Lilith doing her thing. What do you say? Atifa bekitfa is damant sheiri lo ta'ul velo tinpuk la didach velo ba'advach. So what are you saying here? You're saying cheat, okay? Now you have absorbed some of the semen, but I'm going to say this is a permitted deed and will not help Lilith, and it will not be taken out, and it will not be considered to be yours. Here I'm going to say something. I don't know whether any of you have encountered a situation where a very frum Chevra Kadisha doesn't let the children of the departed go down to the graveside. Has anybody encountered that?
No, I haven't.
No?
Yes, when my father in Yerusha had Beit HaMenuchot, I was put away because they were turning around and I may not be there, and apparently it's because of that.
Jean, you know the phenomenon and you know why.
Not for that song, but some
I
burial.
understand it's because what we said.
You have
I am suspected to have done that also.
the departed will only male will have spilt seed. That seed created demons. These demons are flying around. Michael, remember the demons.
Come back at that moment.
And then and they hope one day perhaps their father can redeem them somehow and change them from demons into more kosher people. But once he's dead, they can't do that anymore. So they come around buzzing angrily, and they will take revenge on the real children who have a neshama and became real people. That is exactly why very frum funerals you'll find they do not allow, because this is the revenge of the demons. If we start with, by the way, customs of Avilut and Kvorah, then we have Zohar and Kabbalah from the morning until the night. Okay, even putting on stones on the Matzeva is a Kabbalistic belief that if you read a Matzeva, then you will, as it were, lose your sight. Okay, we don't want to do that, so we all put stones on. Most of us have no idea why, or you'll forget everything you've learned. But we all put the stones on, and with which hand do you put your stone?
Left.
The left, never on the right, because it's associated with the demons and with death. Anyhow, so you could say this prophylactic prayer: Tuv Tuv Yama Itragisha. Okay, now Itragisha is one of God's names, mystical names. You say, come back, God's name, Gilgulai Lichtra'an, and I am calling out to you in the name of God. Lahavdil Elef Havdalot. What do you do according to the legend of Dracula if you see a vampire?
Hold up a cross to them.
Exactly, you do something. Here, Jews don't have crosses. We say something. So if we say something with enough kavanah, we can get around and overcome the power of the demons. B'chulka kadisha achidna, okay, with the help of the one and only united holy God. So that's why I said various customs develop in relation to sons and other relatives attending burials because of concerns associated with spilt seed. Now let's have a look. Someone else to read. I think I saw Victor down there. Victor, are you?
Yes, I am here. I'm processing everything that you just said.
Good.
Which hand are you supposed to do for stones?
Left.
Now that's for putting stones on a matzeva left.
Yeah, putting stones on a memorial.
But if you're stoning people, you use the right hand.
Thank you.
Right. Various among the most extreme examples of the enormity of the punishment for seed spilling are the following. That's a lot of Hebrew.
Okay, I'll tackle the.
My father was not putting stones, but grass.
There we are. Interesting. That's something that we are going to have to check.
And
Is that in Switzerland?
Interesting. Where was your father born?
in Warsaw.
Ah, that explains a lot. Okay,
And
I will.
he visited the Ostrovce Rebbe.
I'm sure he did. Warsaw.
Yeah.
Then that is a whole world. Spirits, demons, es felt nicht in Warsaw. Okay, let's have a look. Harav Moshe Graf was a Kabbalist from Prague in the 17th century. By the way, he prophesied using Kabbalah that Mashiach will come in 1720. Unfortunately, he didn't. Garas, Shema Shema Kevet Hagula. So they said to him, why did Mashiach come? So he said, it's all because of all of your seed that has been spilt by all you Jews. Ach v'rak chet hotzad zera levatala. That's why Mashiach can't come. Now, I'll read the next bit. Dr. Shiloh Pachter. He wrote a doctorate for the Hebrew University and he got a excellent grade. Okay, it's a fascinating doctorate. It's called, sorry, Dad? It's Dainut, yeah. Kam Lauda. Shmirat Habrit. We talked about that. Your Shomer Negiyah, Shomer Shabbat, Shomer Habrit. No seed comes out of the male organ without going directly into the female reproductive organ. The Toldotav Shel Isur Hotzat Zera Levatala. This is a 300-page work on this topic. So we are being mercifully short, by the way. Shalpia Kabbalah yesh lahasbir harbe eruim historim b'ashpat ha'isur v'hahimanut mimenu. He writes amongst on page 230, as I said, 300 pages. Kabbalah explains many events in history are all to do with the sin of vain emission of seed, or those who were able to resist that drive. For example, Dor Hamabul Nenash Biglal Chetzeh. No question, the generation of the flood, as we saw in the Zohar, was destroyed only because of that sin. Avraham, Rashi says, Geneva, Gzela, this and that. No, it was Hashchatat Zera. Avraham and Sarah, Tiknun, we're back to them. Et nefesh asher asu becharan. How, what nefashot did they make? They took all those spilt seeds, okay, that had been created by the sin, and they were able to make them into real people. So they were very busy in Haran because there was a lot of spilt seed around, and they took all these spilt seeds and they made them into real people. Perhaps because they didn't have children of their own yet, so they wanted to save these demons, okay, who've been created by the spilt seed. Ervonan metu, v'gam garmu. Okay, Ervonan, both of them spilt seed, even though there's no direct reference to Er having committed that sin, okay? Could say Vayamet Gamotov, that gam also may indicate, but it's slender. The gam garmun in Shemot Bet David Mashiach liot shruim biklipot. And now you have another interesting idea. Who came from the tribe of Judah? David, okay? Now, because Ervonan were Judah's dead sons, and they are demons, okay? And they gave birth to many demons. Those demons are called in Lashon of the Kabbalah of the Ari Klipot. Now, we haven't gone into that yet, but Klipot are like husks that insulate the holiness from the rest of the world. So the house of David and Mashiach have to struggle hard to get their true spirituality out, and that delays their coming. Had Ervonan not committed the sin of Hotzad Zera Levatala, Mashiach would have had a much easier time. As Rabbi Graf himself told us, okay? Yosef hu amad ben Isayon ben Itzal v'zachar l'Torah tzaddik. But on the positive side, okay, Yosef never spilled his seed, and therefore he is Yosef HaTzadik. Okay, even though he was not, even though he was confronted by a seducer, a woman all the time, he kept his body perfectly pure. Imagine that. בני ישראל שירדו למצרים הם מבחינת הוצאת זרע לבטלה. וגלות מצרים נודעה לוורד הניצוצות שנוצרו בעקבות זאת. Bnei Israel are compared to הוצאת זרע לבטלה. Where should Bnei Israel live? Eretz Israel. Any deviation from that is against the correct order of Sefirot. So when they leave Eretz Israel, it's like Hotzat Zera Levatala. They shouldn't be there. They're going where they shouldn't be. Anything that goes where it shouldn't be is a sin in Kabbalistic eyes. And the Galut of Egypt was there actually to cleanse them of all the demons that had been created because of that emission to the wrongful place. They should have been in Eretz Israel and not Egypt. Kol ma'uto shel Balak nava me'isur zeh. And we don't need to say much about Balak, okay? The whole attempt by Israel with the daughters of Midian, Galut Yuda uVinyamin nav'a ikach v'chen hagalut ha'achrona. Everything, in short, goes to the sin of Hotzat Zera Levatala. Now, this I picked up just by the by, but Reb Arala. Anybody heard of Reb Arala?
Yes.
There's a Chassidut in Yerushalayim called Toledot Aharon.
Yeah.
Now, is it a Mizrahi type liberal Chassidut or is it not?
Yeah, it's very,
It's not
very
a
strict.
Hungarian Chassidut?
It's Hungarian, absolutely related to Satmar. It is extremely fanatical. They're the guys with the white kaftans with the black stripes, and they are extreme of the extreme, okay? Kitzonim shebe kitzonim. And their Rebbe original was Reb Aaron Rata or Rot from Hungary, called Reb Arala. מייסד חסידות תולדות אהרון, שנפטר, should be a tet, שנתיים לאחר תום מלחמת העולם השנייה. He died 2 years after the Shoah, of course, like the Satmar Rebbe himself, he got out of Hungary, okay, and ended up in Palestine. Besifrot Tarat Kodesh writes as follows, and this is a shocking extract. Nitrabu poshim mordim hamashitim zar'am rachmana litzlan. In Europe, before the Shoah, we had rebellious sinners who would destroy their seed, God forbid, ad she'ala kitrug hagadol, until the accuser then accused Israel before God, ba'avonotenu harabim, because of our sins, the accuser won his day in the divine court, in Bet Din Shel Ma'ala, v'nimsarno b'yedei arur Amalek yimach shemo, and we were handed over to the cursed Amalek, the Nazis. La'ashmid la'arog u'la'bed, kol Yisrael hakadoshim arivim zeh bazeh. The problem with the Jewish people is that their fate is interconnected. Kol Yisrael arivim, and therefore the tzaddikim suffer for what the Rishaim do. Ki be'im Yisrael hakadoshim notrin, lintor, of course, is to guard, right? Lishmor. If Israel, the holy Israel, had kept midat yesod, the midah of the sphere of yesod, where is yesod located in the human body? The male sexual organ. Ve'inan oskin botzat zera levatala, and they would not spill seed in vain. Nisuei ta'arovet, or mixed marriages or znut, all of which are not considered to be holy uses of the sperm. En kol umav lashon yicholim lishlot bahem. Then we would never be subject, never be vulnerable to any people, nation, or group. Now, all of this is just to show you how deeply ingrained in Kabbalah, Zohar, and probably before, but definitely the Zohar, which of course was the major spreader of Kabbalah from the 13th century until the Ari HaKadosh in the 16th, the idea of Hashchatat Zera, and this is a hypostasis of astronomical proportions, okay? That you take something which could be connected to the Sefirot, and you make of it the most major cardinal sin. It's almost unbelievable, but of course, it's right here. And I've only given you a tiny fraction of what could be said. So whilst you are chewing over that and ruminating, if I can use that expression, let's have a look at the influence of Kabbalah on the halacha of seed spilling. Shulchan Aruch, Even Hayezeh, Hilchot Tishut, Siman Kav Gimel Sif Aleph. Asur lotzi shichat zera levatala. This is Rabbi Yosef Karo. What will you tell me about Rabbi Yosef Karo before we even begin? He was beginning with K and ending in T.
Yes,
An A after the
yeah,
K.
Malach.
He was a Mukubal.
Mhm.
He had not
Malach.
only did he had a Magid.
Oh, Malach, Magid.
Amad. There's a difference, Jean. A Malach is not a Magid. Zwei andere Sachen. Okay? So, what we have here is Rabbi Yosef Karo, who's a Mukubal. He is a Mukubal almost of the Abulafia school. Now, when did he get his Magid? Shavuot night, when he and Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, another Kabbalist, they were learning together on Shavuot night, only those two. In the 16th century, nobody stayed up all night on Shavuot. That's a Kabbalistic practice. But they were sitting up all night because the Zohar says that at Sinai, God marries the Jewish people, correct? There's a Chatunah. And what is the Maaseh Kiddushin? Maaseh Kiddushin is what? The Luchot.
Absolutely.
And that's why Moshe smashed the Luchot. Why? Because this was to be the day of the wedding. Sinai is the chuppah. And Moshe is the shaliach who's bringing God's ring, as it were, in the form of the most precious thing God had, the Torah, to Bnei Israel. Now, if he delivers the Maaseh Kiddushin whilst Bnei Israel are committing adultery and worshipping an idol, what does that mean? That is lot tinaf. That's serious. So to save Bnei Israel, this is the Midrash, by the way. Okay, the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, Moshe smashes the Luchot. How do we know that it is a wedding day? Very clear. Shir ha-shirim. B'yom chatunato u'v'yom simchat libo. This is Shlomo HaMelech, who is God, on the day of his simcha, okay, and chatunat libo, which is when he gives the Torah to Bnei Israel. Tovim dodecha miyayin. The dodim is the Torah, but it's also dodim. So, Rabbi Yosef Karo is doing what the Zohar recommends. He's preparing. He's one of the Shushbinim, preparing the Kalab, that's Bnei Israel, for her wedding the next day. And you have to stay up all night because you wouldn't want the Kala to be left alone. And so suddenly, Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, who writes this, and it's in the introduction to the Magid Mesharim, says Rabbi Yosef Karo, suddenly his voice changes, and out of his mouth come words, not in his voice at all. And the words are the words of what he calls a Magid, somebody from heaven who's telling. And what does he tell? The Chavruta, Rabbi Yosef Karo and Shlomo Alkabetz, they're in the Balkans, in Adrianople, in the 1530s. And he says, you are wonderful. If there were more like you in the world would be saved. You believe in Kabbalah. This is the best thing. And you are learning Mishnah, which according to the Kabbalah is secret because it's dense and you cannot unpack it. So you're learning Mishnah, which is excellent. what you need to do is to go on Aliyah, because only in Eretz Israel, as we saw in the Hotzat Zera Levatala from Egypt, from Eretz Israel to Egypt, you have to go to Eretz Israel to create harmony in the realm of the Sefirot, because this is where Israel belongs. So he then gives them lots of advice, and eventually the two of them do go on Aliyah. They end up in Sfat. And there's a whole book, Magid Meisharim, of the conversations and the Piskei Halacha that Rabbi Yosef Karo received from his Magid. So Rabbi Yosef Karo is a great halachist, and in the spirit of his time, after the Gerush Sfarad, he's a great Mukubal. So what does he write in the Shulchan Aruch, which is meant to be a halachic work only? And of course it's not, as we'll see. Many Zoharic ideas and Nuranic ideas are in the Shulchan Aruch. Asulotzi shechvat zera levatala. You may not emit semen. Avon ze chamur mikol averot shebatorah. This is the most serious sin in the Torah. Lefikach lo ya'adam dash mibifnim v'zoreh mibachutz. Therefore, you should not gain an erection inside the woman's reproductive organ, but actually emit the semen outside. Lo yisak tana, and you shouldn't marry a woman who is not yet able to conceive. She'ena ruya leiled, because all this is hotzat zera levatala. Okay, Shichvat Zera. Now, this is what the Ba'er Heitev, Reb Zachariah of Belz, who wrote the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, says. Besefer Chasidim Siman Kuf Ayin Vav. This is interesting from a psychological point of view. In the Sefer Chasidim Katav, She'im Echad Mityarei Shelo Yichshol Be'eshet Ish. Say you are intent on coupling with a married woman. You are infatuated and you have to engage in sexual intercourse with a married woman, or be'ishto nida chas v'shalom, or have intercourse with your wife and she is a nida chas v'shalom. Tov lo lotzi zera levatala. Better that you should let the sperm, the semen, come out. Me mishe yikashel chas v'shalom be'isur eshet ish or benida. Clearly, on the balance of sinfulness, it's better to be motzi zera levatala than to have sex with a married woman or your nida wife. Rakitane mem yom, but listen to this. But then you have to fast for 40 days. B'mei ha'kayitz, in the summer, or yeshev bakerach b'mei ha'choref, or spend 40 days sitting in an ice-covered river. You don't need to do the 40 days all at once. You can split them over a period of the year. So every so often you break the ice on the river. V'chatav Bet Shmuel lefi zeh ma shekatav kan. Another Bet Shmuel, Reb Shmuel Feivish, who is author of one of the major commentaries on the Even Ezer, the Bet Shmuel. Okay, Shmuli, he says lefi zeh ma shekatav da'avon motzi shichvat zera chamur mikol averot hu lav davka. Bet Shmuel says the same thing. Rabbi Yosef Karo it's a guzma ba'alma, it's exaggerating wildly, okay? And this is the whole of the Bet Shmuel, which is line 22. V'lo yisak tana. He actually talks about the second bit, ektana. Hadat harav Rama shekatav b'siphei b'shem atosafot demurta l'shamesh im ktana. That is a woman who's below 12. A woman who's below 12, we have a date for puberty. It's called 12 years old and a day for a woman. But is that biologically? Victor, I don't know whether you can tell me this, but would you say the puberty is fixed exactly 12 above, or could it happen before? Silence from Victor.
Happens before, and nowadays it happens more and more.
Before, okay. Victor, do you have something to say?
I have something to say.
Is that you're not?
Yeah, that's known that today there are already 9-year-olds who are getting into puberty, and that is has changed over the years. Yeah.
Exactly. So the halacha says you can have intercourse, it may work. ולא כתב דפליגי. צריך לומר, הדלאי סקטנה, היינו ביטול פרו רבו, ולאו משום הוצאת זרע לבטלה. In any case, he says, the reason that you would not be able to marry a ktana who is not able to have children is nothing to do with hotzat zera levatala. It's to do with not being able to fulfill the mitzvah of peru uravu. Mishum hachi im nasa ktana mutar l'shamesh shima. So, because we're not quite sure when puberty does come, it could come earlier. In the first instance, you want to marry a ktana, do so. By the way, they often did so in the past. Okay. They often had to go through more than one wife, and it has to do with the fact there was a lot of fatalities in childbirth. There's no argument here, okay? So what picture is emerging? That the halachis certainly do not think that hotzat zera levatala is the most cardinal sin, the Ramah. How about having sex in such a way that the semen cannot go into the woman's reproductive organ? The Ramah, Shulchan Aruch says, we have a klal in the Gemara that a couple, married couple, may have sexual relations however they desire. They may have intercourse whenever they desire, and kiss any organ, any limb that they wish to. And the intercourse can either be regular, natural, or it can be in a different way, okay? Or derech evarim, or simply contact between limbs. Levatala. Problem of zera levatala. The yesh mikilin, but the Ramah says there are those who are lenient. You can have an act of intercourse even when the seed will go onto the sheet. Shouldn't do it too often, because after all, the companion to the hotzat zera levatala on the positive side is peru or ravu. Therefore, one should make great efforts to ensure that one has intercourse naturally so that one can have children. But ba'akrai from time to time can be done. But of course, if you want to be holy, want to aspire to a mystical state of Kabbalah and Zohar, then you will be careful. The Tosafot read on Masechet Yevamot, Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet, Rabbi Yosef Trani, Rabbi Shaya Trani, who says, I don't know whether this is entirely irrelevant, but the Tosfot read, Yishai Ditrani was asked a question about a mikveh, whether it's kosher or not, and he says he thinks it is. The question who asked him said, but how can you say so? The Rishonim say that this type of mikveh would be pasul. So Rabbi Yishai Ditrani says, Hilchata Kabatrai. When it comes to practical halachic rulings, we follow the most recent. We don't go back into the past. And then he gives a mashal. He says there's a nice mashal. Who sees father, a dwarf or a giant?
Yes,
giant. When you put the dwarf on the shoulders of the giant, who sees father? The dwarf. Anachnu gamadim al kitvei anakim. We, says Rabbi Yishai Ditrani, are dwarfs sitting on the shoulders of giants. So although we are only dwarfs and they are giants, we see further than they, so we can paskin halacha, even if it is in disagreement with the giants of yore. And where did Yishai Ditrani get this from? From Catholic scholars, from John of Salisbury, who was a student of Bernard of Chartres. Bernard de Chartres. And if you go to the Cathédrale de Chartres, the Chartres Cathedral, you look up at the roof, you'll see that around the roof there are statues of the prophets and of the apostles, of the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, Malachi, Zechariah, and on each of their shoulders, 12 of them, there is an apostle. So the apostles are Lahavdil Elef Habdalot, the Gamadim, and the Anakim are Niviei HaTanakh. Interesting idea. That's just because of the Rid. But what does he say? Tani Rav Bibi Kamed Rav Nachman. Shalosh Nashim Shamshot B'moch. This is a famous Mishnah in Masechet Yevamot. Are we allowed to use contraceptives during marital intercourse with our wives? 3 women certainly can. And one of them is a ketana, in case pregnancy is not good for her, will endanger her health. Another is, of course, a woman who is in danger of health, whose health is in danger if she was to become pregnant, and a woman, again, who is beyond the childbearing age. But how can you use a moch, that is a pessary, I guess, something that blocks the nartik, the vaginal tract? How can you use that? It's otzadzera le batala. The seed is not going where it ought to be from a natural point of view. Lasot kamase er v'onan. And again, he brackets them. Oral, er, and onan, the same thing. Tshuva. Eze maase er v'onan shasra Torah kol shekavalato shelo titaber. Kedei shelo yakhish yofya. Ve'lo rotze lekayem pira v'rivya mimena. The Rid says you've got to get this in the right perspective. Er v'onan were punished not because of hotzat zera levatala. They're punished because they deliberately wanted to frustrate any procreation. Why? For the superficial reason that they wanted their wives to remain eternally beautiful and physically attractive. I'm hearing a voice from my left. Yes, Deb.
Because basically they were only allowed to have relationships.
We're going to get to that. That's what we're going to get to shortly. Okay? But this is one approach. The Rid says the whole thing is to do with Pirya, Urivya, nothing to do with Hotzat Zera. A man can have intercourse with his wife in such a way that the Zera is not going into the natural place. A man can marry a woman who may not be able to become pregnant at this particular time, or may. There is a lot of freedom under halakha for the way in which one carries out acts of intercourse and, shall we say, love, to give it, its rounded out meaning. And we shouldn't be obsessed by any means with this idea of shichat zera or hotzat zera levatala. Aval im kavanato shelo tavo lidei sakana. Now it gets to the point. If you're having sexual intercourse, which you're having because you want to create intimacy, this is love, but your wife is not well and she shouldn't become pregnant, then by all means use a contraceptive device. Okay? But even though it is hotzat zera levatala in terms of the long-term result, but the immediate result is important. We have to have that physical intimacy. It's an important part of the institution of marriage. But you don't need to intend have a child every time you have sexual intercourse. And you can, in fact, engage in an act that's motivated by your inclination, because this is the way of, as I said, the mutual passion does create the intimacy, which is so important for a marital relationship. And say you're just wanting, as a male, to, well, we all have these inclinations, these drives. We've got to channel the drive. That's also okay. There's freedom to do as one wishes in the sexual intimacy area. And there's no issue of hashkatat zera here. Now, another way of looking at this is Bameh Yavo Aleha. Mitzvah. לפי שהייתה בכלל היתר, עד שלא נישאת לאחיו, רצה לקנוס לשם, לשם תואר כונס, לשם ממון כונס. נישאת לאחיו ונאסרה. Now, you can marry a woman for whatever reason. Some people want to marry, because of honor, status. Some marry because of money. People marry for all sorts of reasons. But if a woman is married to your brother, okay, met achiv belo banim, then of course you are forbidden to her. You cannot marry your sister-in-law. But once she doesn't have children and your brother dies, it's a mitzvah, the mitzvah of yibum. Correct? Correct. Yachol tachzor lehetera harishon. Then she becomes like a single woman to you. In other words, we have a woman who's a single woman. You can marry her or not. Your brother marries her. Then she is forbidden to you. She is an erva. If you have an affair with your sister-in-law, that's one of the arayot, eshet achiv, and this is a serious sin mentioned in Vayikra chapter 18. But if your brother dies and there are no children, then this woman is, as it were, a single woman again, and you, the brother, even though she was once your sister-in-law and forbidden, you can now marry her. Okay? Met, whoops, we jumped. Met, okay. Met achiv belo banim chazra ve'utra. יכול תחזור להיתרה הראשון, רצה לקנוס, okay. Talmud לומר, יבוא עליה מצווה. But now, in the mitzvah of Yibum, you aren't allowed to marry her because she's beautiful, or because she's rich, or because she comes from a upper class lineage. You have to do it because it's a mitzvah. Was your intention, when you do Yibum, which we used to do, okay, in Sfardim, some of them do it to this day. If you marry your widowed sister-in-law and has no children, of course, from your brother, you have to do it. You have to have the kavanah l'shem mitzvah. Right. Atya deravi huna ka'aba Shaul detana. Abba Shaul omer. הכונסת יבינתו לשם נוי או לשם דברים אחרים, הרי זו בילת זנות וקרוב להיות הבלד ממזר. Now, if you understand that, if you don't have the right intention for Yibum, then it could be that you've defeated the purpose and you're sleeping with a woman who is forbidden to you. And that's a serious sin. It's a gilui arayot, and a child could be a mamzer, as if you'd slept with your mother or your daughter. That's the Talmud Yerushalmi. Elamai Tama en Miyabmin. The Bavli says, why do we not do Yibum? Why do we all do Chalitza? Correct? We all do Chalitza today to release the Yivama. Amar le Katan. Shema yimsa saris ptana, shema timsa elonit, v'nimsu pogin be'erva. One of the reasons the Gemara says we don't do Yibum but Chalitza is because the woman may not be able to have a child. If she cannot have a child, then we defeating the purpose of the Yibum, which is lahakim zera la achiv, to keep the line in memory of the dead brother going. And therefore, if you can't fulfill the purpose, she actually is forbidden to you, a sister-in-law. And therefore, the real reason, if you like, for Onan having been killed when he was Shichet Arza, because he was actually sleeping with his sister-in-law and was not doing it for the purpose of bringing an heir for the older brother into the world, and therefore it is a erva. It's a forbidden relationship. And this, of course, is to do with, I'm going to close the screen share. We'll have to leave Tefillah Zakah if we do it at all until next time, and some fascinating things about Zohar steeping into halacha in general. But you may remember Henry VIII. Anybody remember Henry VIII? King of England?
We're not that old.
Shmuley, you don't remember? I'm amazed.
I'm not old enough.
I'm amazed. I was sure you would. But remember,
Not a really nice guy that we like to meet.
No, that's why he had to get the church to annul his first marriage. So
exactly. He wanted his first marriage with Catherine of Aragon annulled because he didn't like her. And also she didn't bring him a baby boy and he needed an heir. What did he say? Why is the marriage not a valid marriage? Because he'd previously been married to his brother, Arthur. And although he was now doing Yibum, okay, he wasn't doing it for the right reason. He consulted rabbis, he consulted everybody. Okay, so because, and you can see why God didn't approve of my Yibum with Catherine of Aragon, because she had miscarriages. God is punishing me for having sex with my erstwhile sister-in-law for the wrong reason. Was the Pope impressed? No, because Catherine of Aragon was a very upmarket Spanish Catholic princess, and therefore the Pope used politics. And eventually, by the way, it was because of his research into reasons for getting his marriage annulled that Henry VIII bought a Talmud from Daniel Bomberg. And that Talmud stayed in Westminster Abbey for years. A Bomberg Talmud, and until somebody called Jack Lanza, who was a very wealthy bibliophile in England, and he was a great collector of books and manuscripts, and he always wanted to get his hands, Jewish of course, from Germany, wanted to get his hands on this Talmud in Westminster Abbey. And Abbey was not parting with it. One day, Lanza discovered an old document. It happened to be the deed to Westminster Abbey from the king. So now he went to the Abbey and said, look, if you are willing, I will give you the deed and you'll give me the Talmud. And that's how Jack Lanza got hold of the Bomberg Talmud, all to do with Henry VIII, all to do with if you do a Yibum, but your intention is not pure, is it Gilui Arayot, and therefore God is angry and will kill you, just like he killed Onan. Well, actually, in Henry VIII's case, he didn't kill him, but every baby that Catherine bore was a miscarriage, was born dead. So there you see how all these things can come together. What we really talked about today was the price you pay for bringing Kabbalah into married life. On the one hand, it makes married life into a powerful spiritual exercise. As I said, it is a major, gigantic hypostasis. So, but the price you pay is that you're going to have to avoid spilling any seed, because you it's a package deal. The whole of the demons, Lilith, the Shadim, the Ruchim, and the seed spilling and the obsession. And you can imagine what a young man who is brought up, say, in a very Hasidic, semi-Kabbalistic atmosphere. I did, as you saw, touch Tefillah Zakah, which is said before Kol Nidrei. We just have a look at it next time. But that's frightening. That's very frightening for an adolescent boy, as you can imagine. Victor, would you go along with that? That if you're an adolescent boy and Erev Yom Kippur, you have to read about the seriousness of seed spilling. It could be really traumatic, could it not?
I guess it depends how you identify.
What does that mean?
I think that's a very tough question to answer. I'm feeling put on the spot.
Okay. The subject, it's a difficult subject. You know, we don't like talking about it much. But I think.
Oui, c'est coincé.
What's the question? Sorry? Okay, so what we will do.
I think the topic is not well discussed in yeshivas currently. I think it could be handled much better than it is.
Victor says that in his experience, yeshivas don't really deal with this topic in an appropriate manner for the psychological well-being of young men. I think that that's a very fair statement. So, I'll give you a gloss or two on that when we meet next week to finish this off. And then we're going to go into a much more general relationship, how Zohar and Kabbalah have affected what you think is regular halakha. Washing your hands in the morning, your Nagelwasser, holding a Kiddush cup in fingers that are somehow gripping the bottom of the kos, like petals on a flower, all sorts of things, okay? Things that you know about, things that you don't know about. But we might just say something about this issue next time. And I think that the question is worthwhile asking as to, is this really the price that one wants to pay, or should we in fact stay with the Rambam? What we do as human beings, we eat, we drink, we have sex. These are needs, but they're just there to keep our bodies going and bring children into the world. Don't worry too much, but focus on becoming more intellectual, more spiritual, okay? Making progress in your life. And what you do within the bounds of halakha. And we saw that halachically speaking, if you're not going to get into the Zohar, even though it's very difficult to resist that, okay? Certainly orthodoxy, yeshivas, orthodoxy, any from community, this is an issue that's there, although we don't talk about it that much, okay? Usually, you know, your Rebbe or the Rov in the shul doesn't give a drosha about Hotzat Zera, Levatala. It's a taboo thing. We don't do that, okay? But it is there all the time. It's there all the time. So there is a lot of repression, of course, and it is an issue. And I think, as Yonat said last time, it creates problems even if you're trying to do an innocent thing, such as produce semen for a test to see if there's a fertility problem or not. And then a husband could go into all sorts of problems. And often then the blame stays with the wife. But we also talk about contraception, okay? So we have to find a way of dealing with this a lot better, I think, in terms of yeshiva or other education. And anyhow, I leave you to figure out whether the price you pay for a Kabbalistic sex life is really worthwhile. And on that note, I'll say, have a very good evening. Next week, same time, same place. Good night, bonsoir, and besorot tovot, shuot, v'nechamot. Bye.
Bye.